LAIKA Studios has been around for 15 solid years now, giving us a number of great movies from the past decade, producing timeless classics in the realm of stop-motion animation, to outright throwing out some of the biggest movie names known in animated film history at the Golden Globes this year. The stories have evolved with each movie they release, alongside the continuously growing stop-motion animation techniques. LAIKA Studios is not afraid to teach kids very heavy and dark themes in their movies, hence making their movies more memorable than other animated films this decade. Here, I share my thoughts and opinions on how LAIKA have improved with their movies throughout the years, thoroughly discussing how the studio changed its themes as the time went by. Let's start with one of the more commonly known classics in the realm of stop-motion animation, which is none other than Tim Burton's Corpse Bride, or simply known as Corpse Bride. This movie was released in September 2006, and is not entirely made by LAIKA themselves, but let me explain. The whole production of this movie is never from LAIKA Studios, though the stop-motion animation used is theirs according to the movie itself. Nonetheless, this movie is spectacular in any way you slice it, from its compelling characters, to the quick but organic pacing of the story, up to the gorgeous musical scores and musical numbers. I just watched this a few days ago, and I can't believe I'd shed a tear watching through the ending because I'm not usually a sucker for romance movies, but this movie, to me, is a fair exception. Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter did an amazing job with their vocal performances for Victor and Emily, which are the main characters of this story. Though, the only thing that LAIKA contributed in this film is the stop-motion animation itself, it is still very well done. If you haven't watched it yet, you definitely should while quarantine is still on. It's just amazing. Corpse Bride is technically the Kickstarter for LAIKA Studios as an animation company, but what really gave them a solid name in the film industry, the first debut film as a standalone animation studio, none other than Coraline, which was released back in February 2009. Neil Gaiman's book titled Coraline gave inspiration for this movie that turned into one of the best animated movies of the past decade, and is widely considered as one of the classics in stop-motion animation. This feature film is an incredible mix of fantasy and horror that is just unique in every single way. Easily one of the most magical animated film I have ever watched as a young child. It's epically bizarre in a way that it doesn't ruin the performance of the entire movie. The way the story is presented can easily be followed by general audiences. The stop-motion animation used is just stellar, from the incredible animation of the beldam in the final moments of the movie, to the effort put into the landscape parallels between the real world and the other world, up to the excellent color palettes used to give better emphasis on the film's atmosphere. And exploration is one of the best scores I have ever heard in an animated feature. I also love Coraline's character arc as the movie progressed, and all the side characters involved are pivotal to the movie's plot. Coraline is also LAIKA's first film to get an Oscar nominated at the Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature. This movie, if you have watched it in its peak of popularity, has single-handedly traumatized an entire generation of humans in all shapes and sizes. I remember watching this movie when I was 7 years old, and what's worse is that my two older sisters used the beldam as an excuse for me to not be a bad kid to my mother, otherwise my other mother would come and get me, just like what happened in the movie. It scared me psychologically as a kid, but suffice it to say, Coraline is what gave LAIKA Studios a bright future when it came to their rightful place in the film industry. LAIKA Studios made the permanent mark to the general public through Coraline, but they took it one step farther and released another feature film that followed suit with roughly the same atmosphere Coraline has. Paranorman is the second stop-motion feature film released in 2012. Now, LAIKA has definitely upgraded their animation techniques for this movie, considering the amount of people who worked on Agatha Prendergast, one of the film's main antagonists, alongside Judge Hopkins and his band of ignorant assholes. The story behind this movie is quite engaging as well, briefly covering the darkest eras of American history, which was the Salem witch trials, aka the backbone of the entire film. The musical scores in this movie is one of the key factors that really help the story achieve its light-hearted but heavy theme all throughout. Thanks for that, John Bryan. Even though Paranorman is one of those typical zombie movies, the issues that are brought up are seriously gut-wrenching. The opening scene straight up made me cry the first time I watched it. The scene where Neil is playing with his dead dog got me teary-eyed at the pure joy of knowing that his dog never truly left him. Every frame that Agatha is in gives me all the feels, and when Agatha fades towards the afterlife is the best way to end the story of a girl who finally chose to rest her own soul after 300 years of seeking revenge. Knowing that I've only watched Paranorman last June, I regretted the fact of not watching this movie sooner. Still one of LAIKA's much beloved classics, and is also the second movie who got an Oscar nomination. Things are doing great for LAIKA Studios when they released the second film, but in my opinion, their third movie is the most pivotal movie in their entire career as an animation studio. Pivotal, as in this movie gave them the good and the bad stuff in the film industry. The Box Trolls was released in 2014, and it was inspired by the book, Here Be Monsters, written by Alan Snow. This movie is unlike any of the past two movies that strayed more into darker themes, almost like Tim Burton movies but more child-friendly. The Box Trolls is the first whimsical movie, complete with yet another improvement in the stop-motion animation techniques, and was the holder of the biggest stop-motion puppet LAIKA has ever created, which is the Mecha Drill, the one that Archibald Snatcher used to destroy the Box Trolls cavern in the movie. Anyway, when I was researching the movie's appeal to the public while making this script, it was a genuine surprise to see the amount of people saying that this is a bad movie, that it has a boring set of characters with a horrible storyline that hardly made any sense for younger viewers, and honestly I strongly disagree with all those comments. Just because LAIKA used a different formula in the making of this film doesn't mean it can't be on the same level as the previous movies. And as a tween, watching and understanding this movie wasn't a big issue for me. Their accent did occasionally make me ask my sister about what happens in a scene, but overall this movie is definitely underrated compared to other LAIKA films. This movie outright taught me the full extent of feeling pure magic in an animated film, and the sequence where Eggs and Winnie goes to the ballroom party solidifies that for me. That ballroom sequence is just phenomenal, with the amazing score written by Dario Marianelli, to the smooth choreography of the ballroom dances, to the way Snatcher planned to approach our main character Eggs, up to the scene where Winnie hesitates to even hold Eggs' hand as he bid his farewell to her, and let's not forget the amusing performance of the antagonists. Seriously, every scene therein makes me laugh every single time. And for the people saying that this movie isn't as dark as LAIKA's first two movies, think again. The story hinges on a society that has serious political issues in its government as shown through Lord Portly Rind. Also there's a man hell-bent to wipe out an entire species of sapient creatures if it means that he'll have some sort of power over everyone else, and also the issue of poverty is briefly mentioned but is clearly portrayed within the movie. If I were given a chance to make any non-musical film into a musical, The Box Trolls would be the film I would choose. The film's message of choosing to ignore others' words and figuring out who you truly are is simple but wonderful as a 12-year-old kid. I don't get why a lot of people dislike this movie, but for me it will definitely be one of LAIKA's best films. After The Box Trolls though, LAIKA released another stop-motion animated film in the August of 2016, which is easily up for the best animated feature of the decade. Kubo and the Two Strings by far is the strongest film LAIKA has ever created this decade. I can't stress that enough, this film is literally everything anyone could ever ask for in an animated movie. A protagonist I can highly relate to. Side characters that are not only there for comedic relief but have important roles to the story this movie is trying to tell, antagonists that are severely high threats to the main heroes, a gorgeous score written once again by Dario Marianelli, breathtaking stop-motion animation that is matched with stunning visual backgrounds, scenes that are organic and natural without overdoing anything, and a pure, heartfelt yet simple story that hits you in the soul every single time you watch it. What else is there to say about this? This movie is perfection at its finest. Dare I say it, this movie is flawless. The boat scene is phenomenal, the origami backstory dialogue of Sariatu and Hanzo's first confrontation is spot on. The final moments where it was revealed that Beetle was Hanzo the entire time is just heartbreaking, and Kubo's final prayer matched up with the rebirth score is truly heartwarming. Also the fact that this movie has the best one-liners in any LAIKA film such as this.
Down here there are days worth fighting for.
This.
You are my quest. You always have been.
And this
For every horrible thing down here, there's something far more beautiful.
But what I really love about this movie is the fact that Art Parkinson's pre-puberty voice is forever preserved through Kubo. Yep. They recorded Kubo's lines before Art's voice broke. Also in this movie, Laika has created the biggest stop-motion puppet ever to exist in this world, and that is the 16 feet tall, 400-pound giant skeleton used for less than 10 minutes in the movie. And it took the animator a year to animate that 5-minute scene. Just wow. Kubo and the Two Strings is your perfect movie if you're a person who loves both art and adventure at the same time. I'm speechless just thinking about how magnificent this movie is, just look at it. A personal side note, I watched this movie a year after my grandmother died from old age, so whenever I watch this movie it always makes me emotional, even just thinking about it. It's too bad that it never got the recognition it deserves, but I'm glad this flop wasn't really that much of a setback for Laika. I am still salty that this movie didn't win the Oscars that time for Best Animated Feature of 2016 because this movie deserved the world. It's timeless, it's well written, and most importantly the message that they have projected in this film is very impactful. Thank you Laika, for creating such a personal film that will forever inspire millions of people all around the globe. Though Kubo and the Two Strings just might be the holder of the best animated film Laika has ever made, there is one more film that surpasses this feat. This movie may not be one of the stronger films, but it's by far not the worst movie in existence. Missing Link was released in April 2019, and not a lot of people got to see this movie because of Frozen 2's teaser trailer that spread like wildfire and the hype for Avengers Endgame. It's very sad to think that timing always sucked for Laika. Their films always get overshadowed by bigger movies from bigger company names in the film industry. But, even though this film is the first box office bomb Laika has ever experienced, this film is still in level with all of Laika's past films. The characters are as quirky as the other main protagonists before this movie. The musical score is still as captivating compared to the other Laika films. The stop-motion animation used in this film is truly astounding and monumental for the animation studio itself. My personal favorite parts of this movie are the boat scene wherein it broke as many physics laws as possible, and the climactic ice bridge scene at the end of the movie is intense but also visually amazing. This movie still carries the animation company's dark tones from the past through that overly violent bar brawl that took almost 1 year to animate, the scene where Dunsby was bragging about killing rare species of animals and creatures. Honestly, as a wannabe zoologist, I just want to go inside the movie and punch the old ass straight in the face, up to regularly pointing guns at literally anyone within that movie. The story and its pacing does have some issues occasionally, here and there, but with spectacular vocal performances coming from Zoe Saldana, Zach Galifianakis and Hugh Jackman. Seriously, my 5-year-old nephew preferred Missing Link over Paranorman because of it not being scary, for Pete's sake. And let's not forget that this is the first stop-motion animated film to ever get an award for Best Animated Feature in the Golden Globes 2020, overthrowing Frozen 2, Lion King and Toy Story 4, as well as How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World. CGI movies all lost to a stop-motion animated film. Take your time to wrap your head around that. Even the producer and the director cannot believe their ears that Missing Link ruled over the 3D powerhouses of 2019. This truly is one of the greatest achievements Laika has ever achieved in one animated feature film, one in many more in their future movies to come. Laika is definitely not your ordinary animation company. Their movies always tell a story that can be enjoyed by kids and grown-ups alike, while not being afraid to introduce heavy themes to the young audiences within the movie itself. The stop-motion animation techniques have definitely improved this past decade, reaching milestone after milestone with each movie they release. Every single one of the films is always ahead of its time, that you can watch them over and over again without you ever getting tired of the same message. The style of filmmaking stayed the same after 15 years, just with varying themes and tones to give better emphasis within the scene itself, through the breathtaking musical scores that weaves in beautifully with the animation being played on screen. I think that's the one unique factor separating LAIKA Studios from any other animation companies that makes animated films. The way they present their movies in the big screen, are raw and unfiltered. Their movies don't undergo test screenings unlike other big animation companies such as Disney and DreamWorks that limit the stories to within the target audience. The effort they put into each movie they make is remarkable, from the big puppets they used over the years, to the most ambitious scenes in a stop-motion animated film ever made in history. Every person who worked on every single one of these films wasted years of their lives to make magic possible through the mix of art and science, and boy, the ending product is very rewarding for both LAIKA Studios and to their fans and audiences. I've said this before, but I'm only 2 years older than this studio, and yet I have loved and cherished every single one of their movies, and I hope that they continue making more movies like the first 5 films, in the future years of the company's history.
Sleeping while my guitar gently weeps.